All right, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, December 13th, 2016, and we'll start with roll call.
Amy Seabolt Wilson is excused. Catherine Westaby.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here.
Don Francis.
Here.
Tom Knoll.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Niley Nichols.
Here. First item, consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. A, council minutes from our November 26th meeting. B is payment of bills. C, financial report for November. D is appointments to boards and commissions, and this evening I am appointing Mike Myers to the Board of Appeals zoning as an alternate for a term that will expire on 10/1/18. E is licenses, change of agent for Walgreen Company, Deerfield, Illinois. 2 is 1-year and 2-year operator licenses, they're in your packet. 3, taxi vehicle and driver license applications. F is resolution 1622, appointment of assessor for 2017. G is to cancel the December 27th council meeting. And H is gift of fire truck to the Southwest Technical College. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second. We have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Westaby.
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Knoll.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, and we do not have any requests this evening for anyone to speak. So we'll go on to our reports. They're in our packet if you have any comments or questions. Number 1 is Redevelopment Authority Board, Dawes.
Nothing to add.
Historic Preservation Commission, Killian.
No addition.
Library Board, Westaby.
Nothing to add.
Zoning Board of Appeals, Knoll.
Nothing to add.
And Plan Commission, Nichols or Knoll.
I have nothing to add.
All right. Other reports included in our packet include the city attorney itemized report for November, the water and sewer financial report for November, also the November airport financial report, and department progress reports. Any questions or comments on any of those?
I'd like to comment on, not the airport financial report, but the airport. Saturday is the Santa Claus fly-in. Santa Claus flies into the Platteville Airport at 10 a.m. Saturday morning, and there'll be hot chocolate and cookies from 9:30 until about noon, and I think there also will be airplane rides for sale. I can't remember how much. People want to take rides, but Santa's coming to Platteville on an airplane. He's not going to get run over by a reindeer. I guess that was Grandma.
Any other comments or announcements from council members? I guess I will just mention that the magazine 53818 is out again. If you've not had an opportunity to read this, or if you misplaced your copy and would like another one, they are available here at City Hall. A nice article in there on our fire department, rookie firefighters. So those are available again if you'd like to get a copy. All right, first action item, ambulance service fee policy and allocation. Valerie.
As part of the 2017 budget, the council has decided to implement an ambulance service fee. Before you in your packet are 3 allocation scenarios from which you can choose. There is also a policy to approve, which we will update accordingly based on the scenario that you choose for the allocation. Staff just asked that you approve the ambulance policy tonight, as well as choose the scenario, and we will move forward with getting that all set up in time for the first of the year.
Questions, anyone? We did have a work session on this earlier, so the council members did have a little time to discuss the 3 options. I don't know if you want to go over them briefly, Valerie, maybe just for the public.
Sure, I can certainly do that. Back at, I believe, the last council meeting, we discussed an allocation which was broken down by customer type, being commercial customers, industrial customers, multifamily customers, and public authority customers, all being charged $10 a month, with the remainder of the fee that we pay to Southwest Health being divided by the number of residential customers, which would be approximately $1.68 per residential customer. Mr. Killian suggested a different scenario, which we now have calculated out, in which we still charge the commercial, industrial, and public authority customers $10 a month, but the multifamily we break down based on units. So for the units that have 6 or less, they would be charged the $10 a month. The units that have 7 or more, they will be charged per unit. And we calculated the per unit amount by taking the total number of units and adding that to the total number of residential customers, because we were using residential customers essentially as 1 unit per customer, and dividing the amount of the fee we need to collect divided by those number. And that equated to about $1.40 a month for the units 7 or more and the residential customers. We then kind of did an extended version of Mr. Killian's suggestion, in which we combined all residential and multifamily residential customers, and we just broke it down so we could charge per unit. So residential customers would be 1 unit, and then for however many units the multifamily complex had, we would charge per unit. And that equated to about $1.42 per unit.
All right, thank you. Questions, anyone, or someone ready to make a motion?
I would move that we adopt the extended version of A, which is labeled as B.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the extended version of A? Seeing none, we'll vote.
Westoby,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Could we also just have a motion to approve the policy as well?
Oh. I make a motion, we approve the ambulance service fee policy.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Westoby,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Next item is ordinance 1619, creating section 4103. Chief of Police is going to tell us what that is.
It's become apparent that we need to have a specific ordinance addressing these behaviors. And it was also deemed that it would be a good time to adjust the bond amounts for some other behaviors that we frequently rate. The behaviors specifically are urinating or defecating in public. And, the city attorney helped us craft a ordinance that would capture these behaviors.
Any questions, anyone?
Yes. Does a fine account for cleanup?
Typically not.
What do you do in the situation?
And typically it's for urination and it's not much cleanup involved.
Okay. But in the other situation?
That happens infrequently, and there we typically receive some assistance getting cleanup by the offender.
Okay.
I did have one email, and I don't know if other council members may have also received it, but there was a concern that we do not have a lot of public restrooms available 24/7 in the city of Platteville, and so, not that she was opposing this amendment, but that she thought perhaps that's something we should be looking at as a city, that even if you're at the park, I think her comment was during the winter season especially, the bathrooms are locked, and so there's really no place to use a facility.
And
So-
those aren't typically the issues that we have. It's more so in public areas where there are ample businesses that are open at that time of day.
Okay. All right.
I make a motion, we adopt ordinance number 1619.
Second to the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Full vote.
Westerby,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols. Motion carries.
That's all for action items, so information and discussion, we have a conditional use permit request for 1665 Enterprise Drive. Joe?
Okay, that property in question on Enterprise Drive is currently a vacant parcel. The applicant is interested in constructing self-storage warehouse buildings on that property. The current zoning is a B3 highway business, but it does list warehouse type uses as a conditional use, so that is the request. As a conditional use, it has to be reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission and the Common Council. So the applicant currently is looking at a couple different options regarding the number and size of the buildings. He wants to keep some flexibility as far as what the market desires, as far as the size of the units, which would dictate the size of the buildings and so forth. But he'd either have 350 by 165 buildings or 4 buildings. 2 of them would be 40 by 165 and 2 would be 30 by 165. It'd be a typical layout like we have other storage buildings in town. The building's accessible directly to each unit. There would be paved parking, or at least access drives around each building to provide access to each unit. The Plan Commission considered it at their December 5th meeting, recommended approval. The only condition was that they would like to see sidewalks installed by the property owner at the time. Connecting sidewalks are available to the property as a condition, and staff would also recommend approval. So that would be on action the next meeting. Any questions?
Questions, anyone?
I have a question. I'm assuming that there is no water or sewer required for this business?
Correct.
And is it necessary then for the council to consider that we should also put some kind of recommendation or note in that if water and sewer is ever needed at that site, it would be at the expense of, that there would not be private water and sewer, that it would be the expectation that it would be hooked to the city water and sewer? I mean, I believe that was the concern before, relative to this particular property, and I don't want us to get into a situation where there's an expectation all of a sudden that, oh, I have this business, and now I need water and I need to put in a bathroom, so I need to drill a well and put in a septic system.
That can be a condition of the approval as well, that any service that is provided would be a connection to the city's facilities at the property
Expensive.
owner's expense.
I would agree with that. As being a member of the Water and Sewer Commission, that was a major concern for us. So, yes, I would make that part of the condition, for the for us approving the conditional use permit. That we can
Anything
decide,
else?
you know.
The applicant's here, I don't know if you want to respond to any of that, if,
That sounds perfectly fair. Yep. I think Joe was saying that too. He said he wanted
I'm
to-
sorry, Jason.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I should have
I'm
told
sorry.
you,
Oh, I'm
please,
sorry.
please go up to the microphone, introduce yourself for our records.
Hi, I'm Jason Hemming. I would like to do the storage units. I think that sounds perfectly fair. Joe was telling me about that too. He said that that's how it works. Since you're in city property, you'd go to city water and sewer, which I think sounds like a great idea. And my use, I shouldn't need it, but it doesn't hurt to put it in.
Good.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, this is just information and discussion. We will be having it on for action next time. All right, seeing none, we'll go on to the next item, which is former Pioneer Ford site planned unit development.
Okay, so the city owns the former Pioneer Ford properties. We acquired it with the intent of having that as a redevelopment property. We've, through previous action, have selected the proposal from General Capital to redevelop the properties. early in the process, we've kind of talked to them about following the plan unit development approval process for that redevelopment. It gives plenty of opportunity for public input and review of the project. Since it is city site and is a key redevelopment property, we thought that would be appropriate. So they have submitted the first part of their plan unit development approval information. So this would be approval of the general development plan. It kind of outlines the general layout of the properties, the uses on the properties, et cetera. And once that is approved, then we can get into the additional details as needed through a follow-up approval. And there would be also a development agreement that would accompany that final development approval. So the request, there's four buildings on the property that would be acquired now. Two of those buildings would be demolished. The old dry cleaner building and the arched roof dealer building would be demolished. The other dealer building, the white building on the corner of Pine and Oak, would be retained. It would be remodeled and added onto. The old hotel apartment building, at this point, the intent would be to remodel that for apartments, but there has been also some discussion about using that area for additional parking, which I'll get into a little bit. But that decision has not been made at this point. So their main approval this evening would be, or as part of this approval, would be the construction of the new building. So the dealer building would be, as I mentioned, remodeled. They'd add on additional building to that. So overall, they'd have a mixed-use building, apartments on the upper floors, commercial retail space on the ground floor, and then some common areas for the apartment buildings on the ground floor. So it'd be the existing buildings, obviously 2 stories tall. That would remain. The addition would be a four-story building. It's kind of a U-shaped building fronting on Pine Street and Water Street. They'd have 71 apartments total. It'd be a combination of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom unit types. Within that U-shaped space, they'd have a courtyard. It'd be common courtyard for the tenants of the apartment building. They would also include a additional parking spaces, parking lot on the north side of the building, 29 surface parking lots, stalls. The existing parking lot that they used for display of vehicles on Oak and Pine and 2nd Street would remain, and that would be parking for the development as well. Access to the new parking lot would be off of Water Street in basically the same location as the existing driveway that serves that dry cleaner building. So total off-street parking would be approximately 72 spaces. The Plan Commission reviewed this request at their December meeting. They did recommend approval. There were a couple of items that were discussed at that meeting that staff and the Plan Commission felt warranted, I guess, further discussion as we went through the review of this project. Since this is kind of a cornerstone development, gateway development for the downtown, we were concerned about the appearance of the building from the intersection of Water and Pine Street. Overall, I think the appearance of the building was adequate. Everybody was pleased with the overall appearance, but the ground floor of that building, due to the slope of the site, is really below the first floor of the apartment building. So there's kind of a blank wall with that proposal. There was a desire to see some additional landscaping or some other architectural features on that corner to break up that wall, since it is such a key visibility feature on that development. There is some additional concern a little bit about some of the ground floor apartment units would actually be at the sidewalk level and close to the public sidewalk. So we'd like to see some additional landscaping or buffering or some other features provided to make sure there's some privacy provided for the tenants of those apartments. Assume it would probably be addressed in the SIP later on, but we wanted to make sure they were aware of it going into it, that bicycle parking would also need to be provided to meet our ordinance requirements, as well as vehicle parking. On the facades as proposed, they do have some accent colors provided, different colors, yellow, gray, and white. One of the facades is shown as being all yellow. We do have a design standard for downtown buildings that really says bright colors are acceptable for accent colors, but not for the primary color on the facade. So we would just recommend either that facade be changed to the one that's only visible from within the courtyard rather than from a public street, or that color changed. Either one I think would be acceptable. There was some concern mentioned about the pedestrian crossing. Obviously, there's already some issues that have come up as you cross Pine Street from the Oak Street intersection to get to McGregor Plaza, that this project could theoretically provide additional customers that would go over to that property. And so there was a desire to look at some additional either additional pedestrian crossing or additional signage, maybe some flashing signs, et cetera, along that crossing to increase safety. And then the Plan Commission did also talk about the concerns with the access to that parking lot from Water Street. That is a very congested portion of that street, and there was a desire to improve that situation, and also some desire to see additional parking provided beyond the 72 that are proposed. So the one suggestion that was discussed was the former apartment building, the old hotel building, about possibility of removing that building completely and providing additional parking in that location, which would also provide an additional access point onto Oak Street. So theoretically, you wouldn't have to exit onto Water Street. You could use the Oak Street exit, which would be much less traffic to deal with. The other suggestion was that they could also look at leasing additional parking off-site, such as McGregor Plaza, which has an abundance of parking. So those are some additional items that the Plan Commission felt was warranted as far as further review as we move forward with this review. But overall, they did recommend approval of the project, and staff would also recommend approval. Any questions?
Was there ever any discussion with the developer about underground parking where the oval building is, or the old Dick's Supermarket, Farm and Fleet building?
Early on,
Level of underground parking?
not as part of this actual submittal, but early on in the process, we did briefly talk to the developer, who is here, by the way, about under building parking, underground parking. The one concern that they had, and he can expand on that, is the surface bedrock is obviously there's a section of bedrock that is exposed at one of the retaining walls that they basically built the wall around. So there'd be concern about the feasibility of digging lower than what that site currently is. And I think the concern is it would not be cost effective to provide underground parking there.
Well, it would be an excellent draw as far as people living there. We have that situation with some of the other units in town, complexes. And I was wondering if it was being considered or was considered. And also would take away this situation as far as, I would think it would take it away as far as peeking into the windows of the first floor people. And parking could also be, what should I say? The word is not decorated, but designed such that it doesn't look like parking. I remember going to Indianapolis, and they had parking there that was street level parking, and you thought it was a building, not parking. Thank you.
And the developer is here if you would like
If the
to get more
developer is welcome to
information
come
from
up
him.
and to the microphone, if you would, please, and maybe respond to this question. Anything else? If any other council member would like to ask a question, make a comment. Again, if you would start with your name, please.
Sure, my name is Sig Strutmanis. I'm with General Capital, and we're the developers of this project. In response to underground parking, I love to provide underground parking where possible. It's definitely an amenity that I think is super valuable. Couple considerations in this case. This is a super complicated site, just given the topography, given issues like the shallow bedrock, which we haven't totally explored. We haven't done any soil borings, things like that, but the maps that our engineer looked at initially are kind of indicative that there's probably shallow bedrock. So if we did something, it'd have to be relatively exposed and be built above that, which would make it essentially almost like a 5-story building then, in effect. So that was my one concern. But really, probably more importantly, from a feasibility standpoint, was just the sheer cost of doing that. It changes a construction type for us, where we have to use precast plank. We have to actually build an entire kind of plinth to the building, and that could, just in round numbers, could add $25,000 to $30,000 per stall. And if I'm looking at that, it kind of tips a project that we're already kind of stretching to make sure we're using high quality materials, things like that. Kind of balancing that with the market where we see rents, we just, it just didn't make economic sense either. Even though, I love to do underground parking where we can do it, but it's, in this case, just wasn't in the initial cards.
And the next question is, what do you foresee as the need for parking? It's one thing to meet a code.
Sure.
It's another thing to meet the need.
The practical side. Yeah, I agree.
And then if we get in the future with this 71, 72 units built, and now we don't
Yeah.
have enough parking, they have to go across the street. And I look at some of the neighbors around me, they don't like to walk across one lot,
Yeah, no, I get it.
let alone a street, to get to their residence.
So
It's gonna be a drawback, in
My-
my opinion.
yeah, I wouldn't disagree. So my target with this whole situation was to look at what it would take to get one parking space per unit on site. So I can definitely at least accommodate one car per unit. So we're there. The way that the front entrance is oriented to Oak Street and the way that parking works on Oak Street, we felt that that could accommodate guest parking. So somebody comes to visit, there's probably going to be a handful of unassigned parking spaces in the parking lot, and then some parking spaces on Oak that are visitor spots. So in essence, we have one per unit. Now, I agree with the concept of either securing some extra parking as overflow. We've done that in other properties where we have some kind of an agreement with a neighboring property that if residents choose to have more than one car, they would pay some amount, $25 a month, something. We wouldn't seek to make any money on that, but just basically to secure extra parking in case the need is there. That's where some of the concern came with crossing Pine over to McGregor Plaza, where basically if there's a pedestrian connection that needs to be made, that would be for second cars, besides just people wanting to cross and shop there. And then the other thing, which I'll bring up because I have shifted my thinking a little bit in the last couple of months on this, is we were originally seeking to save the hotel and redevelop the hotel. And now as we dug into the details of the hotel and looked at the real condition of that building, we're not seeing it as cost effective or feasible to necessarily remodel the hotel. So now we still want to take a look at that, but the Plan Commission also expressed similar concerns about how much parking is appropriate, what do we really want to do here. And frankly, if the hotel were converted into parking, the access that Joe referred to between, Water and Oak would be one thing. We could add probably 16 to 18 more parking spaces, which all of a sudden then you're getting into a situation where a dozen plus units could have 2 vehicles, you have plenty of guest parking. Then I feel much more comfortable saying that I would not see parking as an issue. So, I mean, from similar experience, we've seen that one per unit generally does a trick. If I have a little more than that, I feel more comfortable. So, in a long-winded way, I'm saying that I've changed my thinking about the hotel where I would like to potentially make that parking. It'd be close to the front entrance, of our building, and I think it makes sense for a couple of different reasons.
So parking to me is a big question. You have 147 beds, so that, again, it's your clientele.
Right.
If you're renting to adults, there's a good probability that high percentages of 147 will have cars. So if you provide
So-
one per unit, that's 71 or 72.
Right.
And if you take half of the rest of them, you're above the 72. You know what I'm saying, half?
Yeah,
If
let's say we
half-
should be at
if
closer to
a
100.
one-bedroom has 2 people in it,
Right.
you know, a couple,
Right.
and
I,
if you add half, so half of 70 is 35, so now you're up to 35 plus 71 or 72,
yeah, closer to 100 spaces would be.
yeah.
I'm not disagreeing. How I'd like to accomplish that is in two ways. We just got the contact information for the McGregor Plaza manager/owner. I'd like to talk to those folks and then also look at potentially, with everyone's understanding what we're actually trying to accomplish parking-wise, is to look at the hotel site and have our engineers lay it out and see if we can't max out more parking on the north side of the whole property. Probably get closer to, 90, I think.
Yeah, Joe, the requirement for parking in the downtown in this development, what would be the requirement in terms of parking spaces?
As far as what the code would require,
Yes.
I outlined that in my staff report,
One place it said 53.
53 sounds about right. And the reason for that is the way the code requires for downtown parking. Obviously, most of the buildings downtown don't have parking. They don't have spaces for parking. The building fits the entire lot. So what the code says is any development project, redevelopment project that adds additional parking demand, usually through a larger building addition, they're just responsible for providing parking for that additional spaces, the additional demand. And at that point, it's at 75% of what the code requires for development elsewhere in the community. So in this case, we've got 2 buildings that are being demolished. You subtract the parking demand that's already there, and then you're adding, what's above that they're adding for the apartment building. So you do the math and it comes up to whatever, 53 or 54 spaces. So they technically have more parking proposed than what the code requires. So it comes back to a matter of what the council feels comfortable as far as what the demand for this unit would be, or this project would be.
But somewhere you in the write-up here, you said that if you followed the city code, the code would say you needed 147.
No, the code would require 53.
No, but I read it in here somewhere, that if you put aside the B2 code, which is nothing for parking, you put this out into residential, 1, 2, or 3, it'd be 147.
If this building were built out by Menards, it would have a different
Yeah,
parking
yeah.
requirement. Correct.
Well, parking is a big concern because at least to me, because if people can't readily get at the rental unit, that's gonna, seems to me, affect the saleability, the renting of the units.
I don't disagree with you, Ken, as far as parking will always be a concern. And I think that's why the Plan Commission also looked at it and recommended that the developer look at other additional potential parking spaces. And that's why McGregor Plaza was brought up as an option, and also why the discussion of the hotel came up. So I think the developer is aware of that, and hopefully we can reach a resolution on availability of parking.
We also have the situation where we all, the other owners of the buildings in downtown have available to them basically city parking for many, well, for one parking lot, for sure, they have a number of units free. So, you know, to require a new developer to come in and provide parking spaces, and we give the landlords that already have downtown, not, you know, we're not making them provide parking spaces per se at their cost. I don't think that's really true and fair to the developer, because we're providing spaces for those landowners or those people that have apartments for Main Street. It's just, you know, yes, there's a problem with parking all the way around. At least if we look at it per unit, the developer is probably providing more parking than the other landlords in the downtown area.
Well, I look at that, what you're describing, as a situation that I don't believe the city needs to be providing parking for the current owners. I mean, that is a problem that has existed for a number of years, and now we're gonna use that as an argument to let possibly another problem form.
Well, it's what the current situation
It's
is.
something, that's what I've talked about as, there should be designated parking for the tenants downtown. And designated doesn't mean that you're gonna use a city lot free of charge.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Ken, but that's the way the situation
Well,
is,
I'm
so.
just saying that we wanna make it, we wanna start solving things.
I think we are
I
trying to
have
do a little
I
bit
have
of
another
that.
question, and it's not necessarily for the developer, but I've heard all of this about Pine Street, and we know how hard it is to cross. Have we ever considered tunneling and providing an underpass for pedestrians?
I think that would be a very expensive option. We were talking about how close the bedrock is to the surface right now. We did not necessarily hit bedrock for most of that construction, but when we got down to the sewer depths around 7 to 8 feet, we were starting to hit bedrock in a couple of places, especially at the Pine and Water intersection. I remember that the sanitary sewer down 7 feet or so was into the bedrock. That was from the project in '06. So, yeah, that would be a very
And this has
expensive
been a
proposition.
continuing problem, and as we get more development in the downtown area, it's not going to be a problem that goes away. And I've been in enough other communities that have underpasses for pedestrians that I was sitting here wondering if this is something that we had ever considered at Oak or even up the hill at, whatever, that would be Roundtree and Second, I guess.
I think from a human behavior standpoint, that when you're dealing with 2-lane road, one lane in each direction, it can be difficult to get people to want to descend down, cross the street, descend up, when it appears to be quite doable.
I hear
I mean,
you.
so you tend to see it more frequently when you've got freeways or something where there's more lanes of traffic that make that a more attractive alternative for the pedestrian.
Another possibility is overpass,
Bridge.
right?
A bridge.
A bridge, yes, so go to Madison, University Avenue, and see some along there,
Some very nice ones.
and they can be covered.
I have a question for a developer. Sure. Would it be possible, you're talking about a bridge, would it be possible, especially For the apartment complex, the way I look at it is on your second floor of the existing Pioneer Sales Building, the white building, would it be possible if you had an exit off of that and went with a bridge over that would be high enough for, I'm just, and I see everybody going, oh no, but would it be possible?
So, couple of challenges just from a design perspective, just leaving everything else aside. We have units on the south face of the Pioneer Ford building, so we'd have to rearrange it. Not that that'd be impossible, but right now we wanted to use all that factory glass to put that into units, so that those are really desirable, views and big expanses of glass. So, that takes some shuffling around, and I couldn't tell you whether we have enough height based on whatever standards. Probably DOT has standards. I'm sure everybody's got standards for what clearances need to be. They're probably 18, 12, I don't know, who knows what kind of feet. But I can't tell you whether that would be
Okay.
feasible from a height perspective. I just don't know.
Okay, I just wanted to
Right.
put out the question because we don't know until we ask.
Anything else anyone has? Any comments or questions
Just
about the
wanted
development?
to bring up, the plan commission had already brought it up about the pine and water, the view, just adding, architectural elements, things that are especially like interactive, people wanna be there, or, that third place, things like that.
I appreciate that we have a special meeting set up to talk about that with the architect.
Okay.
We're actually thinking, in all seriousness, about some kind of a gateway element that could say even something like, welcome to Platteville, something, that's a poured in place foundation wall, so we could have some kind of an inset, maybe have some lighting on it, do something cool. So everybody's already exploring some ideas, so we'll come back with something cool, I hope.
Anything else, folks?
Well, my comment about bedrock. Well, the bedrock likely here is what, Howard? Limestone, correct?
Yes.
Probably dolomitic limestone, and it's usually layered. So I don't see it as being insurmountable to remove layered limestone.
We've encountered limestone bedrock around here before. In some places, you're correct, it is in layers, and sometimes a machine, a regular backhoe is able to hook one of the layers and start peeling that. But in many cases, it's not easily, you can't easily get to that layer. And so they end up having to pound it or blast it to remove it. It just depends on what you've got. Like I say, in a lot of places, there is some of that fractured stuff, especially the top 18 inches or so. But once you get past that, it's usually very hard, and it's very hard to get a purchase on those layers to peel them off.
Well, I'm just thinking back to what I see going to Madison along the road and going to Dubuque along the road. There's a lot of layering taking place as far as the limestone.
True, but the layer is like the table here. The question is, you've got to find where the end of the table is to be able to pick it up and grab it. If this tabletop of hard rock extends for hundreds of feet in each direction or more, how do you know where to go to grab that, to be able to peel that up without pounding a hole in it and then possibly peeling it up? And that's the hard part that we end up having when we do our water and sewer and things like that. Does that make sense?
To me, right now, we can say it's not impossible. It may be possible. We don't know yet.
Anything's possible given enough money, but you know, I'm just saying that in our experience here, it's very unlikely to find those edges that you're talking about without blasting or pounding, you know, jackhammering through it, or sometimes by luck. You know, sometimes you're right. There's a ledge, the rock comes along and then it drops off and it goes, and if you happen to find that edge, you're golden. You can grab that edge and you can start peeling that back. But you know, that's the luck of the draw. I mean, you can't know that it's there until you actually uncover it and find it. And anything like that is very, very expensive to do.
All right, any other questions? All right,
Thank you,
thank
Sid.
you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is the skid steer purchase.
Yes. We've been reviewing our equipment in light of the budget constraints, and we're looking at, and we're proposing the following. In 2016, we budgeted $22,000 to replace the leaf machine, 10-year-old leaf machine. What we're saying is if we use that money plus some savings that we had from our other equipment purchases, we could purchase a brand new skid steer instead. According to our mechanic, there are fewer failure points, and any of the failures that we do have on a leaf machine are less costly than would be for a skid steer. The leaf machine is under older emission standards and is easier to maintain as well. The skid steer was scheduled to be replaced in 2019. We feel that we could extend the leaf machine to 2019 with a lower risk for very costly repairs. The current owned skid steer is a 2004 machine in fair condition. It has one ground speed. What we're looking at is right now we have a owned machine that we use at the street department, and we lease a machine in the parks department. Our intent here would be to no longer lease that one piece of equipment and just have one piece of equipment that we would share between streets and parks. And so if we had a machine that had a 2-speed transmission, then you could easily transfer it amongst job sites and things quicker, be a little more efficient for doing sorts of things. So what we're asking is that you amend the 2016 budget to delete the purchase of the leaf machine, allow us to purchase a new skid steer, and because of the council schedules, we would ask that you would allow us to carry over funds to 2017.
Can we modify the 2016 budget in 2017? Because that's when this action would take place.
Well,
Isn't that what you're asking? This is
we do
2016.
carryovers after the end of the year, so in essence, we would be doing it as a carryover, I think.
Yeah, we would just have to do a carryover. We could make a.
Well, then it wouldn't be a modification of the 2016 budget.
So it'd be a modification of the 2017 budget.
Okay.
Any other questions? Comments?
I do have one. When's our lease up on the present leased skid steer?
They're calendar year leases.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right. That concludes our information and discussion, and so the council wishes everybody out there in TV land that can't see us anyway, but we wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. We're not coming back until 2017. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Also move.
Somebody want to make a second?
Second.
Whoever you got, Jan. We'll vote.
Westerby,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes?
Francis,
Yes.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
motion carries.